Most gardeners fall in love with the idea of raised beds before they even build one. The pictures online are stunning. Neat wooden frames filled with lush green crops, perfect soil, and zero weeds. But here's the truth no one tells you. Raised beds can be a blessing or a nightmare depending on how you set them up. Beneath that tidy look lies a science that can either multiply your harvests or secretly choke your plants. If your raised beds haven't performed the way you expected, or you're thinking of building new ones, it's time you learn the truths about raised beds no one told you about. The soil you fill matters more than the bed you build. Most gardeners make the same mistake. They focus on the frame and forget the soil. The type of timber, the height, and the shape won't matter if the soil inside is lifeless. Filling raised beds with plain topsoil or raw compost is one of the biggest reasons plants struggle to grow. Topsoil alone tends to compact, suffocating roots, while undecomposed compost heats up and burns tender seedlings. The perfect raised bed mix is one that breathes, drains, and feeds continuously. For the healthiest crops, blend 50% rich garden soil, 30% well-decomposed compost, and 20% coarse sand or cocoa peat. This combination ensures moisture retention without waterlogging and allows roots to explore easily. If you're starting from scratch, you'll want to charge your soil with microbes by watering it with a living fertilizer. Just mix 1 liter of fermented plant juice, or liquid compost tea, into 10 liters of water and drench the bed thoroughly before planting. Do this once every 2 weeks during the first month, and you'll activate soil life and help roots establish faster. The depth of the bed really decides what you can grow. Height isn't just about convenience. It actually controls your plant's destiny. A shallow raised bed, say 6 to 8 inches deep, can only support shallow-rooted crops like lettuce, spinach, or onions. But if you dream of growing tomatoes, carrots, potatoes, or any fruiting plant, you'll want to go for at least 12 to 18 inches deep. The deeper the bed, the more oxygen, moisture, and nutrient space your roots have. However, there's a hidden trap that many folks overlook. The deeper you build, the faster water drains. To balance it, go ahead and line the bottom with a layer of half-decomposed organic matter, things like old leaves, straw, or small twigs. This layer acts like a sponge, holding water while slowly feeding the soil above. You know, it's nature's built-in irrigation system that keeps your crops happy during those dry spells. But overwatering is the silent raised bed killer. Raised beds drain beautifully, sometimes a little too beautifully. Since they're lifted off the ground, water escapes faster than it does in in-ground gardens. That's great during the rainy season, but when the weather gets hot, the top few inches dry out pretty quickly. A lot of gardeners, well, they panic and start watering every day, which actually creates these alternating wet and dry cycles that end up stressing the plants. The real secret here isn't frequent watering, but deep watering. You want to water your raised beds thoroughly every 2 or 3 days, making sure the water soaks at least 6 inches deep. You can check this by pushing your finger into the soil. It should feel moist below the surface, but not soggy. If your bed tends to dry out too quickly, try adding a mulch layer about 2 or 3 inches thick, using dry leaves, grass clippings, or straw. This helps keep the moisture locked in and stops the surface from baking under the sun. Plus, as the mulch breaks down, it feeds the soil microbes, creating a natural fertilizer over time. Your raised bed can actually turn toxic if you use the wrong materials. You know, a lot of folks unknowingly poison their soil right from the start. Treated timber, painted wood, or metal sheets can leach harmful chemicals into the soil, especially when things get hot and damp. Those toxins end up getting absorbed by your plants, and eventually by you. If you're using wood, always go for untreated hardwood or cedar, which naturally resists rot. You can coat it with linseed oil for extra protection without harming the soil. Now, if you're working with metal or concrete blocks, Be sure to line the interior with a thick layer of plastic or landscaping fabric before filling. This acts as a barrier, keeping the soil safe from chemical leaching. Raised beds need feeding more often. Here's something even seasoned gardeners sometimes miss. Raised beds lose nutrients faster. Since they're isolated from the ground, nutrients get washed away through drainage, and organic matter breaks down quicker because of better aeration. That's why, plants in raised beds often start strong, but then fade halfway through the season. To fix this, you'll want to feed your raised bed soil every 2 weeks with a natural liquid fertilizer. One powerful and, honestly, really simple formula is yeast and sugar fertilizer, which boosts microbial life and helps accelerate nutrient release. Here's the exact formula. Just mix 2 tablespoons of dry yeast and 2 tablespoons of sugar into 1 liter of warm water. Let it ferment for about 24 hours. Then, you'll need to dilute it with 10 liters of clean water before applying it to the soil. Water your plants with this solution once every 2 weeks. It not only enhances root growth, but also helps your plants absorb nutrients a whole lot faster. For long-term fertility, go ahead and top up your beds after each harvest with a 2-inch layer of compost or aged manure. This keeps the nutrient cycle alive without having to depend on chemical fertilizers. Raised beds can burn your plants if built wrong. This is a secret that, not many folks talk about. When you fill a new raised bed with too much fresh organic matter, like manure, grass, or kitchen waste, the decomposition process releases heat. That heat can literally cook the roots of your young seedlings. Always, make sure your compost or manure is fully decomposed before you use it. Mature compost, it smells earthy, not sour or hot. Now, if you're working with homemade compost that's still a bit fresh, just let it sit out in the sun for about 2 weeks and turn it often to help release those trapped gases. Only after that should you add it to your raised bed. To see if your bed is ready for planting, stick a thermometer into the soil. If it's reading above 35 degrees Celsius or 95 degrees Fahrenheit, you'll want to wait a few more days before sowing seeds or transplanting. Raised beds don't mean you'll have 0 weeds, unless you prepare smart. One of the biggest myths out there is that raised beds are totally weed-free. That just isn't true. Weeds can still pop up from compost, soil, or even seeds blown in by the wind. But you can cut down on them a whole lot with one clever trick. Put a weed barrier layer at the bottom before you fill it up. Use thick cardboard, old cotton fabric, or landscaping cloth to line the bottom of your raised bed. This stops underground weeds from sneaking through, but still lets water drain just fine. Once you've done that, go ahead and top your soil with mulch after planting. And honestly, you'll barely see a weed all season long. Raised beds need a break too. Just like fields, raised beds need rest. Continuous planting without giving your soil a break leads to nutrient depletion and, pest buildup. Every season, rotate your crops. If you grew tomatoes this year, plant beans or leafy greens next. Beans fix nitrogen into the soil, restoring fertility naturally. You can also grow a cover crop like clover, cowpeas, or mustard between main growing seasons. These enrich the soil and, keep it alive. When the cover crop matures, just cut it down and mix it back into the soil. A free green manure for your next planting. Raised beds can really transform your gardening forever. When they're built and managed the right way, raised beds are honestly one of the most efficient ways to garden. They tend to warm up faster, drain better, and, they produce healthier crops in less space. Plus, you can garden comfortably without having to bend over too much, and even if your soil is poor or rocky, you can turn that spot into a productive food-growing area. The key is understanding the living system inside your bed, the soil life, water balance, and organic matter all working together. If you respect that balance, your raised bed will become a mini ecosystem that feeds itself and, honestly, rewards you season after season. Just a few final thoughts. Raised beds are not just about convenience or appearance. They're about creating the perfect environment for roots to thrive. The difference between a struggling bed and a thriving one often comes down to soil health, depth, and how you feed it. Avoid shortcuts, work with nature, and, well, you'll never go back to plain ground gardening again. If you found these truths helpful, don't keep them to yourself. Share this video with other gardeners who love growing their own food, and subscribe to Growth Hub Central Crops for more deep, practical gardening insights that help you grow smarter, not harder. Your best harvests are just ahead. Let's grow them together.